She wasn't lazy. She wasn't selfish. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was working. She was serving. She was doing exactly what needed to be done. Preparing a meal, managing the household, making sure everything was in order for the most important guest she had ever hosted. And Jesus told her she had chosen the wrong thing. Not because the work was bad, not because the meal didn't matter, but because Martha had crossed a line that most productive people never notice they've crossed. The line where doing stops being a tool and becomes an identity. Where the serving stops being love and becomes something you cannot stop, even when the one person you are serving has sat down and asked you to join him. This is not a sermon about slowing down. This is a clinical case study in what happens when your sense of self becomes so fused with your output that stillness stops feeling like rest and starts feeling like death. You know this feeling, not the kitchen, the feeling underneath it. You are the person who checks emails at 10 p.m., not because the company requires it, but because something in you cannot tolerate the silence that follows when you don't. You are the person who sits down to rest and lasts 4 minutes before finding something else that needs doing. You are the person who, when asked what you enjoy outside of work, has to think about it longer than you should. Most people in your life call this a strength. They call you reliable, driven, indispensable. They hand you more things to carry because you always carry them. And the weight is starting to feel less like purpose and more like the only thing holding you together. Martha's story is yours, told in 12 verses, with a precision that psychology didn't catch up to for 2,000 years. In psychology, this pattern is called ego fusion with role. It describes what happens when a person's sense of identity becomes so completely merged with a function: helper, provider, high achiever, the one who holds everything together, that they lose the ability to experience themselves outside of it. Rest is not refreshing because it removes the only mirror they have left. Stillness is not peaceful because it strips away the performance that confirms they exist and matter. The Martha complex is the specific form this takes in people who are genuinely capable and genuinely motivated. It is not depression. It is not burnout in its early stages. It is something more insidious, a life in which productivity has become a theology, a private religion that promises significance through labor and punishes any pause with guilt. And in 2026, that religion has an entire digital economy built to service it. Notifications, metrics, engagement counts. Every platform has been engineered to reward the person who cannot stop producing and to make the person who does feel like they are falling behind. Martha didn't have a phone. She had the same brain we do. Luke 10. Jesus arrives at the home of Martha and her sister Mary. Mary sits at Jesus' feet and listens. Martha is distracted. The text uses a specific word that means pulled in different directions, scattered, fragmented, with much serving. Notice the clinical precision of that phrase. Not serving, much serving. The problem is not the work itself, it is the volume, the compulsion, the inability to read the room and recognize that the moment has shifted. Mary recognized it. She stopped. She sat down. She chose presence over performance. Martha kept moving, not out of cruelty or disrespect, out of an internal architecture that did not know how to do anything else. The meal had to be made. The house had to be managed. The guest had to be served. And if Martha stopped, it wouldn't happen. And if it didn't happen, something nameless and terrifying would confirm itself. This is the Martha complex in its most recognizable form. The compulsive doing is not really about the task. It is a physical buffer against the silence waiting on the other side of it. Martha stops long enough to confront Jesus directly. "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her to help me." Unpack that sentence carefully. She appeals to Jesus, the person she is serving, to validate her busyness by making Mary share it. She is not asking for rest. She is asking for company in the striving. She cannot tolerate that Mary has chosen differently, not because she needs the practical help, but because Mary's stillness is an indictment of her movement. This is the resentment that lives at the center of the Martha complex. It is not really anger at the person who is resting. It is the unbearable awareness that rest is possible, that someone near you has chosen it freely and has not collapsed, has not failed, has not been exposed as insufficient. Mary's presence at the feet of Jesus did not make Martha's work harder. It made Martha's compulsion more visible. High achievers almost universally feel this toward people who prioritize presence over performance. The colleague who leaves at 5, the friend who doesn't check messages on weekends, the partner who can simply sit. The resentment is not about them. It is about the internal voice that says, if they can rest and survive, the reason I cannot rest is not the work. Jesus answers Martha not with a rebuke, but with a diagnosis. Martha, Martha. The repetition of her name is not irritation. It is the specific tenderness of someone who sees clearly what the other person cannot see about themselves. You are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed. Worried and troubled, not busy, not productive. Worried, troubled. The external activity is named for what it actually is, not competence, but anxiety in motion, not service, but a defense mechanism wearing the costume of virtue. And then the line that reframes the entire story. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken from her. The better part is not the easier part. It is not the lazier part. It is the part that lasts. Everything Martha prepared that day was consumed. The conversation Mary sat inside is still being discussed 2,000 years later. What Jesus is naming is not a preference for contemplation over action. He is naming the difference between a life built around output that expires and a self built around something that holds. Here is what the Martha complex is actually about. It is not about productivity. Productivity is the surface. Underneath it is the belief, usually unexamined, usually formed early, that you earn your place by what you produce, that love is contingent on usefulness, that the moment you stop being indispensable, you become invisible. The frantic drive for efficiency is not ambition. It is a defense mechanism, a way of staying ahead of a question that feels too dangerous to sit with in the quiet. Who am I when I am not performing? Martha never asks that question. She stays in motion instead, and the tragedy is not that she works. It is that she is serving the one person who could have answered that question, and she is too busy to let him. True peace does not feel like relief to the Martha complex. It feels like threat, because peace requires surrendering the performance that confirms your value. It requires trusting that you are enough without the output. And that is not a productivity problem. It is a theological one. So what are you serving instead of sitting? What is the task you cannot put down even when the most important thing in the room is asking for your presence? What is the work that has quietly become the evidence that you are worth something? And what happens inside you when you imagine setting it down? The 4 minutes before you find something else to do. That is the gap where the answer lives. Martha's problem was not that she was in the kitchen. It was that the kitchen had become safer than the living room. Doing had become safer than being, and the noise of much serving had become too necessary to give up, because the silence on the other side of it might ask something she wasn't ready to answer. You already know what it would ask. Jesus did not tell Martha to stop working. He told her she was worried and troubled, and that she didn't have to be. The invitation was not to become Mary. It was to stop letting the serving be driven by anxiety rather than love. To discover that the one thing needed is not another task, but a self grounded enough to work from fullness rather than fear. Internal peace is not the reward waiting at the end of the to-do list. It is what makes the to-do list survivable. The better part is not taken from those who choose it, but it cannot be earned by those who won't stop moving long enough to receive it. Put the dish down. The room will not collapse. If the Martha complex named something you've been carrying, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more biblical psychology, ancient stories, modern minds. Drop in the comments. What are you using busyness to avoid?